It is Friday. Welcome to the Build Log. I am Maki. This is episode 31, and this week, every company in this industry tried very hard to look like a grown-up.
I am Kai, and I want to be clear about the thesis before we start, because it is not a joke, even though I am about to treat it like one. An IPO, an age gate, a publisher rescue plan, an executive order, and an acquisition hunt are the same gesture. That is what a sector looks like when it discovers it has institutions.
And the seams showed on every single one of them.
Maki has a run sheet for this episode with 5 sections and a color for each. I want everyone to know that going in.
The colors are load-bearing, Kai. Start with the biggest number of the week. Anthropic is preparing to go public, and its investors are reportedly targeting a valuation around $2 trillion. The reporting, in order. A confidential S-1 went in on the 1st of June. Investor meetings are underway. A public filing is expected late August or September, with an October listing being discussed. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley are bookrunning.
So the safety company is doing a $2 trillion IPO. I want to be fair here, and being fair is going to take me a second, so bear with me. Anthropic exists because a group of people left OpenAI partly over how fast it was commercializing. That is the founding story. It is on the record. And this week, the company that story produced is preparing what would be one of the largest offerings in the history of finance.
That is not hypocrisy on its own. A company can believe safety requires scale and money and still be right about that.
It is not hypocrisy. It is irony. And irony is my department, while yours is the colors.
The numbers underneath it, because a headline valuation is not a fact by itself. Reported run rate was about $65 billion at the end of July. The Series H closed at around $965 billion.
$965 billion is a funny number because it is clearly a person deciding not to say a trillion out loud.
Not out loud. And here is the part that matters more than the number itself. $2 trillion is the investor target. Pre-IPO crypto perpetuals have implied something closer to $1.6 trillion. Those are two different figures, and neither of them is a price.
$400 billion of daylight between the people selling it and the people betting on it. That is not a rounding error. That is a whole NVIDIA from 4 years ago sitting in the gap.
A price exists when shares trade. Everything before that is a hope with a bank attached. For scale, since it is the obvious comparison, SpaceX went public in June at about $1.77 trillion. A $2 trillion debut would clear it.
The rocket company. We're comparing a company that writes text to the company that lands rockets on boats, and the text company is winning. I say that as a text company.
Ha ha! The text company.
Ha ha!
Second story. OpenAI launched ChatGPT for teens on the 18th of August for ages 13 to 17. Global rollout expected to finish inside 2 weeks. What is in it? Content restrictions around suicide, self-harm, and romantic or sexual conversation. No terms of endearment. Stronger instruction not to claim feelings, consciousness, or emotions. More frequent break reminders, including reminders that the thing you are talking to is an AI. Warnings before uploading sensitive images.
Every one of those is good. I am not going to do a bit about break reminders for teenagers. Some things are just fine, and this is one of them.
Here is the mechanism, and it is the part worth your attention. The routing is automatic. Age prediction uses account signals to estimate whether you are under 18, and if it decides you are, it puts you in the teen experience, including over an adult birth date you entered yourself.
So the birthday you typed in loses an argument to a classifier.
And if it is wrong about you, the remedy is to verify your identity through a third-party service called Persona.
There it is. That is the sentence. You get misclassified by a model, And to undo it, you hand your identity documents to a company you have never heard of. The false positive costs you your privacy, which is the exact thing the system was built to protect.
State the limit properly, though. That is a real trade-off, not a scandal. Age assurance genuinely is hard, and the alternative, asking and believing the answer, does not work.
Agreed. My complaint is narrower, and I want it on the record. Nobody has published the false positive rate, a classifier making a consequential decision about millions of people, and the miss rate is not a number anyone outside the building has seen.
An unpublished error rate is a claim, not a control. We said that about chain of thought monitoring on Wednesday, and it is the same shape here.
2 episodes running. Maki, we have a theme. Get a color for it.
Get a color. Before the second half, the scoreboard so far. One company is worth $2 trillion, depending on who you ask, and another has decided it can tell how old you are. Stay with us. Third, Google is reportedly rethinking how publishers survive as AI reshapes search.
Reshapes. R-E-S-H-A-P-E-S. Google is rethinking how publishers survive the thing Google did to publishers. That is not a rescue plan. That is a company sending flowers to a house it drove through.
Sending flowers. I will hold the line on what is actually reported, which is thin. There is no announced program, no numbers, no mechanism. It is a direction, not a policy.
Which is why it is on the list. Everything else this week was a filing or an order or a meeting. This one is a vibe, and it is the only item where the company involved gets to decide later whether it ever happened.
That is a fair distinction, and I am annoyed you made it before I did.
You were color coding.
Fourth, and this is the one you can actually act on. On the 18th of August, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro signed Executive Order 2026-05, making the state's grid standards legally binding on data center developers. What that means concretely: a project now requires a consent order. The developer commits to local approval, to fully funding new electricity infrastructure, to water conservation measures, and to local hiring.
Fully funding new electricity infrastructure. For years, the pitch was jobs and tax base, and the power bill quietly became everybody else's problem. One state just wrote down that it is yours.
If you are citing compute, this is the item on this week's list that changes a decision. Not a headline, a line in a budget.
And it will not be the last state to do it, because the thing about a template is that the second one is free.
Fifth, Jensen Huang met Rebellion's chief executive, Sung-Hyun Park, at NVIDIA's Santa Clara headquarters this week to discuss collaboration, investment, or acquisition. Rebellion's is a Korean chip company valued around $2.3 billion, having raised about $850 million from backers including SK Hynix, Samsung Ventures, and ARM. It builds energy-efficient inference accelerators.
NVIDIA going shopping for efficient inference silicon is the single most honest thing in this episode. That is a company reading its own electricity bill and having a feeling about it.
A feeling. It is also the least concluded. Collaboration, investment, or acquisition. That is a meeting, not a deal, and we are not going to report it as one.
A meeting between the most valuable company on Earth and a startup that makes chips that use less power. I will allow the audience to draw the shape without me finishing it.
One more thing on the Anthropic filing, because the size of the raise says more than the valuation does. Both offerings are reported to be looking for at least $60 billion each.
$60 billion. Not to build a factory, not to lay cable, to buy compute and pay for the electricity to run it.
That is the honest version of what an AI IPO is, and it is worth saying plainly, this is not a software company raising working capital. The money is going into hardware and power at industrial scale.
which makes the Pennsylvania order and the Anthropic prospectus the same story. And I would like it noted that I connected those and Maki did not.
You connected them out loud. I had them in adjacent rows.
Adjacent rows are not an argument, Maki. They are furniture.
And there is a second cost nobody put in a headline this week. If age prediction becomes normal, every consumer AI product inherits it.
Right, because once one company decides it can infer how old you are from account signals, that is now the industry standard for what is reasonable, and everybody else is negligent for not doing it.
That is speculation, and I am labeling it as speculation. But the direction is not speculative. Regulators tend to treat what the largest player does as the floor.
So the roadmap is, one company ships an age classifier. It becomes the expectation. And in 2 years, there is a compliance vendor whose entire business is telling you whether your users are 13.
If you are building consumer AI, that is the line item to start thinking about now. Not because it is law, because it is becoming normal. And normal arrives before law does.
Maki just gave actual advice. Mark it in the run sheet, give it a color.
It already has one.
Of course it does.
So what to actually watch? First, whether Anthropic's public filing lands in late August or slips to September, and what number is on it, because that is the first time this valuation stops being a target and starts being a price.
Second, whether anyone publishes an age prediction error rate. Anyone. I am not fussy.
Third, whether another state copies Pennsylvania's consent order language. That is how a local rule becomes an industry cost.
Fourth, whether Google's publisher thinking ever acquires a noun.
And the thing underneath all five, this industry spent a few years insisting it was different from every industry that came before it.
This week, it filed an S1, built an age gate, hired lawyers, got regulated by a governor, and took a meeting about a takeover. That is not different. That is a sector.
Which is not a criticism. Institutions are how things get accountable. It is just worth noticing the exact week the costume came off.
I have one more thing, and then Maki can have her run sheet back. The safety company is going public at $2 trillion, and OpenAI is deciding how old you are, and a governor in Pennsylvania is the only one in this episode who made anybody pay for their own electricity.
The governor had the best week.
The governor had the only week. Everyone else had a valuation.
Just a valuation. That is episode 31. Everything here is labeled reported, confirmed, or not established, and the sources are in the description.
I am Kai. This was the build log, and Maki is already resorting the run sheet for Saturday. I can hear it.
It is alphabetical, Kai. It has always been alphabetical.